Hey everyone, Kane from VividChim here, and 2020 was the longest decade of my life, with most of it being spent indoors. Despite this though, it was a decent year for games, and I wanted to share some of my personal favourites with you. Note that these are my opinions on games that I've played which released in 2020, so if it isn't here, I either didn't like it enough to include it, or didn't play it because I have plans to play it down the road for one reason or another. With that out of the way though, I ask you to press the like button if you enjoyed this video, and let's get into this. Honourable Mention: Cyberpunk 2077. Let's get this out of the way. I really like Cyberpunk 2077 on PC. I don't like the way CD Projekt Red management completely botched its release by forcing it out too soon. I don't like that console gamers were lied to about the product they were paying their hard-earned money for, and I'm glad Sony took it down and kind of hope Xbox does the same. But as I said, I have the PC version of Cyberpunk 2077, and I got an incredible experience that was only slightly hampered by bugs, and I have a feeling that it will eventually become one of my all-time favourites. In terms of pure personal enjoyment, Cyberpunk would be my number one for 2020. The reason it's not included in the list though is that I think the next 5 games are ones that I've enjoyed a considerable amount and weren't made by treating this studio like a sweatshop to meet unattainable targets, even after 3 delays and a pandemic. These next 5 games are far more functional across the board than Cyberpunk is in its current form, with much less controversy surrounding them, and from the games that I've played a substantial amount of in 2020, they are far more deserving to take the spots in my opinion. Simply put, Cyberpunk isn't in my top 5 of 2020 because it shouldn't have been released in 2020, but I still enjoyed it enough to warrant a mention. Number 5. Resident Evil 3 Remake. Resident Evil 3 is a bit of a weird entry on this list because when it was originally a top 10, it was at number 10, but it got cut out when I decided to make it a top 5 instead, but has since weaseled its way back in. Why? Because it's just good fun. Yes, I know it's very short, and yes, I know it isn't as good as the original, I've been told both of these several times, but I honestly couldn't care less. It was a quick action romp that was just a breath of fresh air for me, and it honestly made the most out of its short runtime. It especially made for a nice break when starting my Resident Evil franchise review in 2020, as all the games I'd played leading up to the Resident Evil 3 remake were much slower in their pace, and while most of them were enjoyable, if not really good, apart from Code Veronica, just being able to fly through something was really what I needed to keep me going. That's not to say it's all good. I do wish it was longer, and I do wish the game was more open, as all the areas felt super closed off, which stopped things like Nemesis from really shining. Also, Resistance is still terrible. Overall though, while not a world-changing or year-defining game to the eyes of many, I found it enjoyable enough to warrant a place on my list. Number 4. Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. One of the more recent reviews on the channel, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales was the first, and as of writing, only game to be purchased for my PS5, and I have to say that I'm very glad I made that decision. Spider-Man on the PS4 is my favourite Sony exclusive, and getting more of that experience was something that I was very excited for, especially with how Miles Morales improves on the formula that the previous game sets up, while flexing the power of the new console effectively. It's a great game that I think could have easily been higher on this list, but its narrative fell a bit short of the previous game in my opinion, mostly due to how rushed everything felt towards the end of the story, something which I believe is caused by its rather short runtime by comparison. Don't let that switch you off from Miles Morales though, it was still a fantastic game that is more than worth your time, and was easily one of the best gaming experiences I had this year, well deserving of number 4. Number 3. Phasmophobia. What may be the shock entry on this list for many, Phasmophobia is one of those games that took me completely by surprise in 2020. It has all of the red flags for a game. It's an early access horror game on Steam. Up until recently, that was never really a good sign, but they seem to have had a renaissance recently because here we are with Phasmophobia, a game made by a single developer that is more fun than many much larger titles. I absolutely love playing this game with my friends on Steam, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds for it. Go buy it on Steam if your PC can handle it, you will not regret getting your hands on Phasmophobia. Number 2. Ghost of Tsushima. You know, for the longest time I'd heard the term cinematic experience thrown around in gaming, and I'd always wondered what it actually meant. Did it mean a game with long cutscenes? Did it mean a game that used those black bars? Did it mean a game that ran at the movie standard 24 frames per second, or some combination of the three? Then I played Ghost of Tsushima and I finally understood. I saw what a cinematic experience really was for a video game, and it wasn't the cutscene length or the black bars or even the frame rate. No, a cinematic video game experience is what Ghost of Tsushima brings to the table. Art in a moving image. Dedication to presenting the player with well thought out and crafted shots and environments that sucks them into the world on screen as if they were at the cinema. Images with power behind them, scenes that make you feel even without words and dialogue, and performances that create an experience that can transcend a medium. I could sit here and talk all day about the combat over stealth mechanics, but none of that really matters to me in this game, even if both are excellent. Ghost of Tsushima is like a movie that you watch which blows your mind. You see the love and thought put into every moment, and it helps you appreciate not only the media artifact at hand, but the medium at large, and you want to experience that high again and again. It is a masterclass in visual storytelling and art in games. And number 1. Hades. So how do you top off a game like my number 2 entry? Well, with a game like Hades, that's how. I don't even know what I can say about this game that I haven't already said in my review of it. It's just incredible. It's simple but masterfully done, an impeccable soundtrack, a wonderful story, and the best damn gameplay that I've experienced in 2020 by far, all from a genre that I hated up until playing this game. I mean, how could it not be number 1? It takes everything that makes a good game on this list and says, now let's make everything the best it can possibly be, and it just does that as if it was a normal thing to do. It is a flawless game. It's the only flawless game that I've probably ever played, and while I can't comment on The Last of Us Part 2, because I haven't played it, hence why it's not on this list at all, the fact that that won Game of the Year over what is easily a genre-redefining experience that is universally praised, and did so without crunching its workers or destroying a company's image, is damn robbery in my opinion. I said it in my outro then, and I'll say it again right now. Hades is my Game of the Year for 2020, and it's not even close. What are your top 5s for 2020 though? Let me know in the comment section down below. I've been Kane from VividChim, and I'll see you all soon.